some of this out.
Okay.
All right, so I think if it's okay with you, you might expect a few more people. It's a really hard room to find. It's a little bit of a different type of room than you're probably used to at this point in UT, but we'll make the most of it, and we're going to be here for the entire semester. So first, welcome back to class. Did you guys have a good sort of first day or last week? Some of you started. Everything is going well. Are you excited to be in your final year of class? No. Okay, so I'm just going to get started. So we're kind of looking at giving you an overview of the course. We're going to take you through the syllabus. It's the same thing that you probably had multiple times, but there are things that you probably are a little bit anxious about, and today's your opportunity to ask a few questions, and also to just find out a little bit more about the course, maybe get to meet your classmates, and try to figure out how you want to do some of these different assignments. So today's sort of a way to get oriented a little bit. Wherever possible, and where we have permission of the different individuals coming in, we are going to try to record. But there is no term test, there is no final exam, so it's really, if you're just missing something and you want to catch up, that's what it's intended for, okay? So there's nothing that you should really be too worried about. We want you to look at this as a seminar, a true seminar, not where you're going to get tested, but just to learn different topics. And I have the luxury of being able to introduce Dr. Pressy, who also taught with me in the summer, and she will also be taking over the session next week, and you'll hear a little bit more in a few minutes from her as well. So throughout this course, one of the things that I want you to understand is that neuroscience is this really dynamic discipline, and it's changing. So I'm like always surprised that when we're looking at a topic that I'm very interested in, and I'll talk to you a little bit about psychobiotics, and psychobiotics is now a thing, and there's a huge industry in the United States, not so much here in Canada, but there's this really changing sort of emphasis on how we look at various aspects of the brain and behavior. And we never used to look at the gut, and now almost everything kind of at least examines what's happening within the gut and within the gut microbiome. So I'll introduce that topic again a little bit later on. You're going to learn a lot of different things throughout this course, including how the gut microbiome might play into things like neurodegenerative diseases, or how it might play into neurodevelopmental diseases. And then you'll also hear about sort of the other aspect of things, which is how do we make sense of all of this currently? Like, what are sort of the state-of-the-art technologies that are in place? And we have a wonderful guest speaker who's going to come in and talk to you about sort of the neurosurgical perspective on how we look at and examine these neural circuits. And these neural circuits, this idea that's slowly come about over the last 15 years, is now a really strong and embedded part of neuroscience. And how does all of this play into neurosurgery? And we'll hear from him a little bit later on in the course. So I did want to really emphasize that your wellness in this course is incredibly important. And so we also want you to reach out to us if there's something going on that you need us to be aware of. If there's a deadline that's approaching, or there's something that you need to talk to us about in this course, please feel free. Like, either one of us or both of us, we're happy to listen. And it is a very important part of your undergraduate now, that your wellness is something that you should be taking care of. I really hate this phrase. Have you heard of fake it till you make it? So I don't want you to do that, because I keep hearing it all the time in grad school, in med school, in professional school. I was told that when I first started teaching like 10 years ago, like just go to class, just fake it. Students won't know the difference. The problem is it's actually not good. So if we don't know that there's a problem, we won't be able to help you. And if everything looks like it's going well for you, that's the assumption that we're going to make. And we don't want that. We want to be looking out for your best interests in this course wherever possible. Jessica, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, just like feel free to send us emails. We've both been through undergrad and grad school, and we know how difficult it can be, and we are quite accommodating, I'd say. And also, if you have any accessibility issues, please let us know in advance so that we can be accommodating in terms of having assignments or whatever due and on time.
Yeah, 100%. So we know that sometimes life happens, and we want to acknowledge that if something does happen, that we'll be available for you to kind of discuss that. So I don't know like what your exposure to neuroscience is. You're going to be doing a lot of reading. You're going to be doing a lot of presentation, and you need to figure out what interests you. And you're going to be communicators, and you're going to be really great communicators in this course. But you actually need to know like what interests you. And that's really hard. I think that one of the hardest things is actually trying to figure out what kind of paper you want to present, what kind of research you want to expand on. And I'll give you a good case in point, and again, maybe Jessica has her own take on things. When I was in undergrad, I primarily did my undergrad in physiology, so most of my physiology training here at U of T, we didn't really get a lot of choice in what we were able to present or talk about until our fourth year. And in fourth year, we got to choose like a topic that we got to present. And this was a long time ago, so it was very innovative at the time. And you might think that, oh, well, you know what? It's just an assignment. It's just not going to be worth very much, or actually it's worth a lot, but maybe it's not going to be all that useful to you. But I did my topic on something that I kind of was interested in, on Parkinson's disease. It wasn't something that I knew a lot about. I kept hearing it in lecture, and I kept hearing about it in various aspects. But I did my my fourth year sort of seminar on Parkinson's disease, and it turned out that that was useful to me because in grad school it was one of my first projects. And so you might think of it sort of as a throwaway exercise, like everyone's going to do it, and I'm just going to pick a topic that is kind of just out there, or I just need to get it done. I just want the mark. That's true, but you can also look at it the other way. Not only will you get a mark, but you're also going to be learning a lot about something that you may not know a lot about, or know it in more detail, or to be able to explain to other individuals. I don't know if you guys had a fourth year project in your undergrad?
I did actually. So I didn't do my undergrad here. I did my undergrad at Carleton. So my research project was at the National Research Council of Canada, and I did not have a choice in my project, and I actually hated it. So that's also very important to know what you don't like to do. So if there's something that you want to learn about and you end up deciding that you totally hate it at the end, that's very valuable information with regards to making a decision on grad school or what to take in future courses. If you're not interested, don't take it. You're not going to do well in that.
100% true. And some of you are going to start thinking about grad school or what you want to be doing next anyway, so it's a good opportunity for you to think a little bit along those lines. So going back and talking a little bit about my interests, so I'm always fascinated by the fact that all of the different researchers that are going to be coming in are going to be talking to you about their areas of expertise. So you'll hear about ALS, you'll be hearing about things related to neurodevelopmental disorders and other things. But if you think about it, and if you go all the way back in the research, we actually don't know what the cause is. Most of the time we don't know, and that's surprising. And so we're starting to kind of think about other avenues, and one of those avenues is the gut microbiome. And some of you might have seen this paper that came out just a few days ago talking about the role of the gut microbiome, how if you're taking drugs like Prozac to be treating different types of mental health disorders, it actually changes the gut microbiome, changes serotonin levels. It hadn't really been investigated before, and it kind of gives us new insight. We don't know the cause of depression, and we know that there are changes in the gut microbiome, but is it like cause and effect? And that's a great question that we hope that some of you might be interested in. So we're going to talk about all sorts of different aspects in this course. We're hoping to hear from you and your interest in this course. Things like just basic brain biology, to brain disorders, to brain circuitry and understanding brain circuitry, whether you integrate new methodology, because neuroscience is one of those fields that if you're really delving into it, this is really where the revolution in understanding cells and how they're connected together, that's really led to the explosion in single-cell transcriptomics. So some of you might think, oh, well, cancer research, that's where it's really taken off. But it actually started, single-cell transcriptomics, looking at RNA in individual neurons, it actually started in neuroscience, and it's sort of gone to the rest of biology as a result. And of course, neurodegeneration, right? So we still don't know a lot about these neurodegenerative processes and how this all works. You'll hear from experts in the field But the precise mechanism is actually under a lot of debate. We know there's some common mechanisms, but the exact cause, whether it's alpha-synuclein, how that alpha-synuclein starts Parkinson's disease, etc., it's still very debatable right now. So we're in a really interesting time within neuroscience. So this is for me, and again, I think Jessica, you'll have your office hours posted. Do you know by chance like when you might be available at this point?
I can be available before class, an hour or two before class. That's a good time for me, or later in the week. So
and we'll post those for you like on Quirkus, and I think you have like this really amazing thing where students can sign up on these different office hours directly on Quirkus. So we'll set that up for you shortly. Okay, so I'm going to actually, Jessica, do you want to go through Isabel and Bassett as well as a little bit about their research?
I can introduce myself a little bit more as well. I'm a research associate in Dr. Melanie Witten's lab, and I am basically in charge of managing all of our grad students and getting them through the grad program with a healthy mindset and also on time, which is very important when you start meeting people in grad school who have been stuck in their programs for 8, 9, 10 years. So we really are, a lot of my job is making sure that everyone is moving along smoothly. So I also did my graduate degree here at UT and then a postdoc in France, and now I've come back and I'm managing this aspect of Melanie's lab. So I want to introduce Dr. I'll get it just a second. Okay, so Dr. Isabel Aubert, she is a researcher up at Sunnybrook, and she has had her lab there for over 15 years now, and she does a lot of research into Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. She's doing a collaboration with our lab at the moment, where we're trying to use focused ultrasound to deliver viruses into mice brains, because this is going to be a useful strategy for moving therapy very quickly from mouse into human, especially in disorders that are so rapid onset, such as an ALS or some forms of Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Bassett, she is a researcher down at CAMH, and she does a lot of her primary research on schizophrenia. So she will be coming to give us a lecture in October. In October on the 21st here, where she's going to be presenting some of her original research on schizophrenia as well as epilepsy and epileptic disorders. Sorry, and Dr. Lipson.
He's a neurosurgeon, but he's also, it's kind of weird here at U of T, to be in neurosurgery, you actually have to go back and get a PhD after you've done your MD. Kind of weird, right? So you never really get to leave school if you're in neurosurgery. And so he actually did basic biology research, and then he's also a neurosurgeon. And he does a lot of that focused ultrasound in humans, and he's also involved in doing deep brain stimulation and manipulating the different parts of the neural circuitry around motivation, reward, movement, you name it, like the circuits he's kind of interested in, and so you'll hear about his research. He's also up at Sunnybrook as well, so probably why they collaborate.
Yeah, probably. Everyone's very interconnected at UT. So next week on the schedule is myself. I'll be giving you guys a tutorial on how to give a proper journal club style presentation. So I'm going to give you a journal club presentation, and then we're going to critique my presentation, so you guys know really what we're looking for. We're also going to have a couple of students who took the course in the summer. They're going to come and give you their perspective on how to work effectively in a group, and they had the top mark for their presentation in the summer, so they're going to try to impart some of their experience onto you, which is really good. And also they'll probably talk about why they chose the paper that they did and how to select the important data from the paper, because you don't actually want to talk about everything in the paper. And then, as you can see here, the last three and a half weeks of November, you guys are going to be giving you our presentations. So this will be done in a group. So we really want you to meet a friend and get into a group very quickly. We have a deadline for this in the syllabus, and there's a mark associated with it, so you need to do it to get the marks. And of course, we have Thanksgiving holiday here on the 14th, and we have our fall reading week in November. Do you have any questions about the schedule? It's pretty clear.
So awkward.
You won't be this quiet by the end of the class.
I Okay, so again, just a little bit of the mark breakdown and how we're going to be doing things. And I had a really quick offline discussion with Dr. Pressy a little bit earlier. So in total, if you look at all of the guest speakers, including like next week where we have like student guest speakers, we have 7 different sort of responses that you could write. And today is an example of one of them, so this green sheet. And so from that sort of 7 responses, we'll take the best 6 out of the 7. So they're each worth about 2.5%. As long as you're showing up in class and you're filling this out and you're dropping it off before you leave, you're going to get a good mark. Okay, so just try your best on these. Sometimes they'll be very oriented around the science and what you might plan to do next and give a brief rationale, but they won't take like more than a couple minutes for you to sort of think about. And in most cases, we're going to try to provide it for you at the beginning of class, so you'll have time to think about it before the lectures begin or the guest talk begins. And you'll see how we evaluate them. And this first one, like the mark, when you hand it in today, you'll get your mark back by tomorrow morning. Is that okay for everyone? So that's the 15% responses. So you'll have like the best 6 out of the 7 count toward that, and you can drop like the lowest one, or we'll drop the lowest one for you automatically. Participation, it's a tough one, right? So you guys are going to be much more active down the road, right? Yes, you will. So it's really hard, and it's hard to kind of gauge like participation, but we want you to try to engage with the guest speakers. They're coming here because they know that you're really good students. They want to come and present to you. They're not coming here to present to us. And they want to excite you with the different types of research that they have. They want you to ask questions. Like, there really is no silly question. Just ask. Like, if you're not sure, like, why did you get into neurosurgery? Or why did you decide to pursue that line of research? Or what was your undergrad like? Just interact as much as you can and ask questions about the research wherever you can. And again, we'll try to give you, I think we did this in the summer too, sort of a midpoint, like where are you kind of at right now? Are you doing really well? Do you need to speak up a little bit more? Do you need to participate sort of online a little bit more? We'll give you some feedback on that. You don't have to be in every single class, but we'd like you to try to show up as much as you possibly can. All right, did you have any questions about either of those 2 assignments so far? No? So the other thing that we're going to ask you to do is to work together in a group, and it's a group of like 2 or maybe 3 depending on the class size. But we want you to work in a group, and that's important because in research, you're not doing things by yourself. If you are working with other people, it's really important. If you're on a dragon boat team, you know the importance of teamwork, right? Or if you're on any kind of athletic team, it's important to rely on someone else. And it's the same thing in research, being able to know that you can rely on someone else. And Jessica and I, or Dr. Pressy and I, are kind of modeling that a little bit for you. And you need to know how all of that works. So we do want you to think about that. Have any of you worked on group assignments before? Yes? Did it work out well for you? Yeah? Okay, so we're hoping that it works out well for you in this course. And you're going to be finding a paper, and you're going to be presenting it as a group, and you're going to also be doing some written responses that could be related to the paper, as long as it's kind of in the same research field as any of the presenters that come in. So it could be on ALS, it could be on different forms of schizophrenia, it could be on something that you've heard about, but we want you to work on it both individually for the written responses as well as being able to present it. Okay? How many of you presented before? Okay, this is good. Okay, awesome. So that's a really large number. And group work can either work really, really well, or it can be disastrous. And it depends on like how much you're communicating with the other person. And sometimes if you've never done a group assignment before, it can not work out well. And if you have done lots of it and you know some of the issues where communication at certain points in the year might be a problem, then it may not work out as well. But we do encourage you to kind of think about who you're going to work with, the types of papers that you want to be reading, etc. And again, some of the things, and we're happy to do this for you. And I think you got quite a large number of students asking you for reference letters as well. We're both happy to do this. And sometimes when we're asked to evaluate, we have to indicate like you have critical thinking skills or that you're able to work in a group. And this also gives us, an honest way for us to assess like your collegiality, your ability to work together, etc. Okay, so it's not just something that we're doing to make your life more difficult and more challenging. It's something that is actually a really important life skill. Okay, so black hole. Just talked about a whole bunch of things. Do you have any questions for either of us at this point? Anything? Nothing. Nothing. Okay. It is a black hole. This goes in and nothing comes back out. All right, so I won't go through this in any detail. What we are hoping in this course is that you are going to use this opportunity to really go in detail and get a lot of depth into like a topic that you might have heard about in your other courses, and to be able to present that in a logical way to your classmates. It's a tough skill, to be honest, but it's an essential skill. No matter where you go, you may not go to grad school, you may not go to professional school, but communicating is like incredibly important, and we want you to be able to communicate details. All right? Yeah, and we do want you to impact the U of T neuroscience community. From the last class, so not only are we inviting students to come back and share their knowledge, so that they're impacting your neuroscience class, but I've also asked some of the students who put together a wonderful presentation to come in and present in some of my other classes. And so this is your opportunity. You can look at this as sort of a jumping off point to be able to communicate your knowledge throughout the entire university. And I think that that's maybe a different way for you to kind of look at this. We do want you to start thinking about teaching. It's really important. And it is a skill to be able to teach. So you need practice in order to be able to do that. Again, there are lots of really cool ways that more and more of you are aware of being able to do things online. For those of you who have done group work before, how did you do it? So you had a presentation or you had to write something. How did you actually do that group work? Yes?
You have to write something and present it, so we kind of made a group online and we just kind of collaborated on that.
So you work together mostly online. Did you ever meet in person?
Only to practice basic presentation.
Okay.
It's hard to meet like
6 people, it is tough to kind of meet everyone. Yeah, Sajad?
I found that using Google Docs is useful because you have chat and comment options. So it's easy to
So-
respond stuff.
So chat and comment options are useful, and again, you can use these modern collaborative methods, and many of you have already used them. Do you think that you ever need to get together to practice? So your colleague said that you did, right?
at least once.
At least once. Do you think that that's important, or can you do everything online? Yes.
I found with group work it's important to meet once together, like at the start, as well as practicing for the presentation, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page and kind of moving in the same direction.
Yep, absolutely. And so we went through some of the group work in the summer, and what we found is that the groups who did all of their group activity all online, like they didn't meet at all before they actually presented, they didn't do very well. And so it's important to meet. It's important to get a lot of it done and out of the way, and then to actually practice it. And I think, did you have anything that you remembered in particular from the summer around?
The groups that came to office hours and brought questions to the office hours, they really did well as well in the presentations. Because a skill that you guys are hopefully going to learn through the class is how do you choose what's the important information in a paper to present? Because we don't want to hear about all of it. There's a lot of it that's going to be supplemental. It's not going to be important. And that seemed to be the majority of questions that were coming to the office hours. So come and see us if you want our input on your presentation.
And it's really important to understand that if you're showing up to office hours and you're getting help, it's not like, oh, now we're going to work you harder, right? So I don't know if you've ever had classes like that. I used to have classes like that.
I used to have class like that too.
Yeah, so like if you show up to office hours and you get help, then we're actually going to mark you harder. So that's not what the intent is. It's really to try to help you become better communicators. Yeah, we do want you to be able to, and this is sort of the journal club / presentation. I kind of use those terms interchangeably. You're going to have to do a lot of reading wherever you go. So it doesn't matter if it's graduate school or if you're going off into the public sector, if you're going to become a consultant, if you're going into law, if you're going to become a healthcare professional, wherever you go next, I can guarantee you're going to do a lot of reading. And you're going to have to learn to assess what you're reading relatively quickly. So we do want you to start thinking about a paper that you haven't encountered before in another class, and to be able to communicate that in a really concise way along with your partner. So this presentation assignment is a really important one. In research, we call it like journal club. And it's a staple of presentations to be able to present a journal article. And how do you guys decide on journal clubs in Melanie's lab?
We usually try to get the most up-to-date papers that have been coming out through Google Scholar that are related to the field in some way. Or if we have collaborators that we either want to collaborate with or are currently collaborating with, we'll do their papers regularly. And whenever we have new students coming to the lab, we will obviously review our own papers that have come from the lab so they understand like how their project has evolved in the last decade before they even arrived. So, and we have weekly journal club meetings. So if you join a lab as an undergrad or a grad student, you will be presenting regularly with this format.
Just curious, are any of you in like a research lab currently? Some of you? Do you get to go to journal clubs at all? Have you presented at a journal club? How was that experience for you? Was it good?
It was daunting, but you know, you get used to it after a couple of rounds.
What was daunting about it?
The PI just sitting there staring into your soul.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. We'll try not to do too much staring into yourself.
You won't be that intense enough.
Yes. So I think for us, and again, feel free to jump in at any time, Jessica. Like we do want you to participate. These guest speakers that we have coming in are not for our benefit; they're for your benefit. The presentations that you're going to be hearing, a way to kind of get engaged and to participate is to ask your colleagues questions, not to kind of trip them up, but just because you want to learn a little bit more, or maybe something that you heard the first time around, it wasn't clear to you and you just wanted to get it clarified. Like, those are different ways to participate, and I think those were what we found to be really great forms of participation.
Yeah, I also found a lot of the students in the summer, when you start thinking about how to set up an experimental design, how do you run the correct controls, like if you're thinking about those types of questions and you want an answer to them, go ahead and ask. Like, we definitely had Dr. Frayne came and gave a presentation on sleep biology, and we had a lot of really great questions about why did you use optogenetics instead of DREADS, or did you do this type of follow-up experiment, and those were great questions. Those are the types of questions that you want to be thinking about the research, and that's a good way to also, if maybe that's a lab that you want to join for a research project or for grad school, engaging with the prof in this type of environment where it's very friendly is a great opportunity to meet them. So just things to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think that that's an excellent sort of way for you to think a little bit about what might happen after you finish your undergrad, which is not that far off because you're in 4th year, right? Yes, no one wants to think about it, but they're all kind of thinking about it. Here's your introduction to different researchers and potentially joining their labs. Something might just really jump out at you, and you might get really passionate about something that they've mentioned, or you've been thinking about it, and they've just really engaged you in one of their guest talks. So hopefully you will participate because it's useful for you to kind of think about your future career.
Are most of you in 4th year? Is everyone in 4th year? There's nobody in 3rd year right now.
They're not supposed to be. So these are some of the different topics that were chosen over the last little while, including the summer. So Alzheimer's disease therapies are always like a really hot topic. So if any of you have been interested in following that, you'll know that there's a huge huge controversy in the field right now. Nothing has worked in Alzheimer's disease, And what's the current sort of theory is that there are a group of researchers who have actually been blocking publications that relate to other kinds of therapeutic approaches. And so everyone's been stuck on the beta amyloid hypothesis, and that's actually been kind of a hot topic of debate during the summer. That this beta amyloid hypothesis has not really panned out over the last 30 years because researchers have actually been blocking other publications from being in top-ranked journals. So Alzheimer's disease is always a really hot topic. CRISPR-Cas9, Parkinson's disease, again, all of these are very important topics. Neuroimmunology, multiple sclerosis, as Jessica pointed out, you'll hear focused ultrasound at least once, but more likely twice, because not only in mice models, but in human models, focused ultrasound is already being done here in Toronto. It's one of the testing centers for focused ultrasound, and it is a really, really cool topic to hear about. Single cell transcriptomics, brain-computer interfaces last year, and then of course the gut microbiome of the brain is also a topic that some students found interesting. And hopefully this might get you interested in these topics as well. Okay, so I think one of the things that we're going to try to do, and it depends a lot on the different researchers. I know that NIR has done this in the past, and maybe we can convince some of the other guest speakers to do this too. Maybe we can get Melanie to do this. That would be awesome. We also want to give you some opportunities outside of the class to interact with these researchers if they have the time. There's no guarantee. So in the past, we've been able to set up these lunches, and I think Jessica and I will try together to get the guest speakers to do that. It will be on the HMB nickel, so you don't have to worry about going to lunch. We'll pay for it. And then we can talk about that research like outside of the class. Okay, so hopefully that's something that you might be interested in pursuing. So here's an opportunity for us. Is there anything that we've missed that we need to be able to address? Is there something that you're not clear on?
I was just wondering, for the presentations when we do one, are we expected to answer questions surrounding like our paper, like not only just our paper but other ideas that other papers have come up with?
So I think in general, we don't expect you to be an expert in the field. So I'm going to try to answer that in two different ways. So you're going to be presenting this with a partner. So both of you should be able to answer questions from the other person's presentation. So if you did the introduction and you didn't do the results, you didn't present the results, you should still be comfortable with the results and know the parts of the results if I were to ask you. So that's one aspect of it. But in terms of like just in general, like the overall field, I don't think anyone knows every last detail of every last paper in the field. So I don't think you need to become an expert in every last paper in that field.
I have actually had a question on the second answer. So, like on the second part of the answer, that's what I was asking.
Okay.
We'll also go over this a little bit more in detail next week about what the scope should be around your paper with regards to the types of questions that we would ask and that your peers would ask. Like general knowledge is nice to have, but you don't, again, we're not expecting you to be an expert by any means in a particular topic.
Is there any other questions that we can answer for you at this point? Think of this as part of your participation grade. Okay. There's like no burning question. Like the syllabus is perfectly clear. Everything is like crystal clear. Yes.
How will attendance be taken in classes?
Okay, so how will attendance be taken? I think it's a small enough class that over the course of the semester, like I think I know most of you. In fact, I think I know like 99% of everyone here. But we will like have a sign-in just in case we've not been able to see you. And then usually we'll circulate that. I think in the summer we asked a couple of times if everyone had signed in. We're just gonna wait because the first couple of weeks of classes, like people are kind of course shopping and kind of figuring out like what their schedules are like. So we're just gonna wait a little while. But sorry, there was a hand up at the back. Yes.
For the written
for the written assignment and the presentation, are those on the same paper or different ones?
Yeah, so that's a good question too. So,
They can be, if you want. If you end up choosing a paper with your partner that you're not super keen on, then feel free to choose another paper to write the critique on. But if you want, you can do the same paper. This being said, do not plagiarize your partner, and we would like to have some unique ideas in each of the different assignments. So we will be using Turnitin to be checking for plagiarism, and again, when we read them, we want to see some kind of, some of your own ideas been put into your individual written report.
So only the presentation is with partner, the writing part is individual.
right, so if you both decided that I love this paper, I'm gonna do a review on this paper according to the guidelines that we will give to you. So I think in every assignment, both the rubric and the guidelines were presented. So you'll have both of those before every assignment. And I think we can start posting them pretty soon. So you'll have a pretty good idea of how much time it will take. If you're both doing it, you need to make sure that your work is separate. So you're not kind of doing the same work, but you could in theory do the same paper.
The paper choice deadline by the 23rd, is that for the paper or the presentation?
That's for your partner and presentation paper.
Anything else?
Just a
Yeah,
quick
that's
question.
okay, yeah.
Is it only just one paper that we're doing, that we're preparing for the presentation? Or for the presentation part? It's only one presentation, right?
So you're gonna pick a primary paper. Again, the criteria that will be fairly recent. It will be in a highly ranked journal. It's related to one of the topics, and generally the best way to do this is to kind of run it by either Dr. Presti or myself, and you get the okay, and then you just kind of run with it. But it is like one paper that you're going to be presenting. So think of it, that presentation, I called it group presentation, I also called it journal club, so think of it as sort of a joint journal club, so one journal article. I think. Anything else? Yes.
About the attendance, but if we have to skip a class or something.
Yeah, so sometimes things happen, so you don't have to be here every single class. We'd like you to be here as often as you can, and I think that in the syllabus we actually give you a little bit of leeway where you don't have to be in every single class. And things happen. If you need to miss for extended periods of time, what might you do? Like if you need to miss more than one class, what would you do?
Contact me.
Yep, so just contact either of us or both of us and just let us know that something's going on, I'm not gonna be in class, here are like the dates where I might come back, and yeah, we'll definitely take that at face value. Any other concerns or things? Yes?
So you mentioned that one class might have to be missed. Is there material or anything that would have to be caught up on for future classes? Or is it just the attendance part that's really marked something else?
Yeah, so again, you don't have to be here for every single class. We'd like you to participate in as many of the classes as you can, and particularly like just supporting your colleagues and showing up. No one wants to be presenting on the last day and have the room empty, like, hey, I got all my participation marks, I don't have to be here anymore, and like it's just like 2 people. Like that would suck, right? So we want you to come as often as you can, but you don't have to be here 100% of the classes to get like a good mark on your participation. Any other questions?
Yes.
So regarding the presentation topic, does it have to revolve around what the guest lecturers are talking about, or as long as it's about neuroscience, it's fine?
I think generally, and going back to what Dr. Presti had mentioned earlier, so we're considering this sort of like journal club. So think of this sort of as our lab. And so we have like common themes that we want to develop. So whether it's like gut microbiome and its impact on the brain, whether it's neurodevelopmental and autism related, or whether it's something related to neurodegeneration of ALS, or some aspect of neurodegeneration, or schizophrenia. So it should fall into like those broad categories, but I think there's a lot of leeway there. So like if you pick a related topic, like Dr. Bassett may not not talk a lot about like certain forms of epilepsy, but you wanted to cover like a childhood form of epilepsy, like that would be pretty okay. Yes.
Is there like a preference for high impact journals?
Yes. There is going to be some guidelines around high impact journals and what you have chosen for your journal article. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm just going to go through a couple of slides, then we'll take a break. We're probably going to try to finish at around 3:40ish today, just to give you some time to maybe talk to someone in class about potentially doing a group presentation, also to give you some time to fill out that green sheet. You'll hand that in, that will be sort of the 2.5%. You'll get that marked tomorrow morning. But I'm hoping that you fall in line with the summer group. So we've got some students from the summer to respond. So have you all had a writing assignment in a biology class? I think most of you have had at least one. And so like the vast majority of our class had that. And is this also true for you? I'm like dying of curiosity. Your favorite types of classes are where you have lectures and then you have tests and quizzes. Your favorite type of class? Being honest. Kind of, right? Because it's straightforward, you just go in, you get the grade. They're not as rewarding. So there's a paper that came out in PNAS, which is a high impact journal, earlier this week that actually says that type of blue 50%, the thing that you like is actually the worst for you learning. Did you know that? No. So the better way for you to learn something is actually to engage in active learning, which is harder because you actually have to do more of the work rather than just getting like a lecture, go home, memorize things. And so I'm hoping that it's something that you'll take away from this course as well. And I think we're going to take a break. Just before we take a break, and again, the washrooms are down the hall, past the stairwell to the right if you need to get there. Neuropharmacology, high impact journal or not? Like, would you want to publish there? Well, you want to publish, okay. So undergrads, everyone wants to publish, given. If you're in grad school or you're just about to finish your grad school, you want to get out and get into like a postdoc program where you are finishing a postdoc, would you want your last paper to be in neuropharmacology? So in other words, high impact paper, or not? High impact journal? So Dr. Pressey, would you want to publish here? No, okay. So I'm going to take you through this paper and then we'll talk a little bit about it. And I'll introduce some different concepts for you. This is not about the gut microbiome, but I also wanted to just introduce some things that you'll hear more about next week as well. So it's 2:53, so let's take a break right up until like 3:05 if that works for you. So feel free to grab some coffee and some snacks, and you can start filling out the sheets. And if you need to talk to Dr. Pressey, she'll be here, and I'll be kind of wandering around as well.
There's just that one left with the